Welcome back to my channel. Have you noticed on Sister Wives that none of the kids are on the show anymore? Or most of them, and if they are, it's very rarely, and it's very rare in that they do scenes with their parents, or that they even appear in events. It's even more rare that you see them doing a talking head. Like, when was the last time you saw Gwendolyn Brown, the daughter of Kody and Christine on the show, in a talking head actually, talking about what's going on in her life? When was the last time you saw Aspen Logan Hunter outside of a couple of the children, including McKelty and Madison, along with Gabriel, showing up recently to talk about the passing of his brother Garrison, along with Savannah? We haven't seen many of the kids this season. In fact, the majority of the children that we're seeing this season are Kody and Robin's kids. And why is that? Why aren't any of the other children filming? Well, it could be because Kody doesn't pay them to film. Kody doesn't pay them to film, and there's no payment from TLC because TLC doesn't have contracts with them. And because TLC's contracts are with the parents, it's up to the parents to pay their kids. And so it's kind of hard for the parents to lure their kids into the shell if they're not going to pay them. Now, it sounds like at least Christine pays her kids now a little bit for the amount of time they get on screen, the amount of hours that they work, maybe minimum wage. I don't know, but Kody does not pay his kids. So all of the times that you are watching Aurora and Brianna, and all of them on the camera, just remember they're not getting paid. They're benefiting from the life that Kody is exploiting them for, right? They get the nice houses, but they don't have a savings account for themselves. They don't have 1099s or income that they're making from it. And for the amount of years that these kids have been on television, you would think they would have a nest egg set aside. But that's just not the truth. And I'm seeing this more and more this season as there's more and more dramatic behavior between the parents. The kids are more and more scattered and want nothing to do with the show. But it's not just like that. It's because the kids don't like to film. They don't want their privacy invaded. They don't want to be connected to a show that has, for all intents and purposes, caused a lot of pain and harm in this family. And Garrison's death should have been a moment for Kody, or for even the women, to put down the camera just for a moment and actually reflect on what the cameras are doing to the family. Now, reality television is its own beast because on reality television, there's no union. Child actors and actresses are all under the SAG guidelines, the Screen Actors Guild, and they have a union and they have guidelines for the children that are on screen and on film. And the Screen Actors Guild stipulates how long a child can work, what their payments are, how much education they have to receive, how many hours they can work per day, per week, what kind of fund needs to be set up for their future. Like a trust fund, they have protection at least more than the kids on reality television that have none. And TLC is notorious for not paying children and using children as a vehicle for TLC to make money. And what I'm actually pretty proud of Gwendolyn Brown doing is she was in a new article with Teen Vogue. And in the article, they speak to kid stars that were on reality television with featuring Hannah Gosling and Gwendolyn, one of the daughters from one of the Real Housewives, two of the daughters from a 90 Day Fiancé spinoff. And in this, Gwendolyn had quite a bit to say. And I think it's kind of timely because right now we're witnessing what the fallout has been, because on the show, they are not saying that the final text messages that Garrison sent had to do with the show and the fights about the show. And so it's very timely that this comes out and that Gwendolyn's using her voice in this way. Now, she doesn't mention her brother, but here's what she told, or Teen Vogue. So Gwendolyn, if you remember, was 8 years old when the show started. She said, "I was super into it as a kid. When she went to school, she would subtly tell the other kids about her status as a reality television star, and she and her siblings would compete to get attention of the camera operators she considered the film crew to be her new uncles. And the show lifted her family out of what she called a poverty situation. They were very poor. And then she says, we just got thrown into fame and thrown into money. And I stopped wanting and needing for things. Life is a lot easier for a kid that's not going hungry. It was quite a blessing initially. It was later when she was treasuring through the muck of puberty while filming that her view of reality television as a blessing became blurred, and she knew someone was always watching, and it left her feeling stifled. She said, I couldn't have a hard day. There wasn't a lot of privacy, and then cameras were not allowed in the kids' rooms in terms of like, they weren't filming them all the time, but she said she felt like she was always under a microscope, and she was once angry at one of the moms and slipped out of the house to get some space. and she had just let out a yell of exasperation when she noticed the camera watching her. She said, "I was so embarrassed." She remembers having been caught in a moment of teenage angst, and she was worried the producers would include her yell on the show, but it didn't make the cut a small mercy. She went on to say, "All that anger and all that publicity, and oftentimes I even wanted to be angry on camera. I think there were a few times that I probably was, even if as a kid you want attention, and you can look back at it as an adult and be like that poor kid, but also poor me now." And it's true if you think about it, she and all of the kids, whether they're on the show today or not, their names get brought up on the show by the parents, whether or not they want to be affiliated with it or not. Whether they want their lives to become a storyline or a fight is not up to them because their parents talk about them, regardless if they're there or not. So you don't have the same level of privacy, even if you try to step away, as long as your parents have access to those cameras. She also said that there were times she was glad the cameras were there, like when they got to go on family vacations and she gets to go back and watch those, like it was family fun. They also captured the hard times, like when Christine divorced her father, which started a chain reaction of all of the wives leaving him. And now that Kody is a monogamist, Gwendolyn's view of the divorce was that it was bound to happen. Cameras or not. She said, "I felt like they should have divorced for a while. I remember one time as a kid, I saw them arguing. And my first thought was, I hope they get divorced." What kid thinks that, right? In retrospect, she thinks her parents made the best decision they could. She doesn't think growing up on camera is the best idea she enjoyed. Some parts of it. Now it's sort of ebb and flow her feelings about being filmed, continue to evolve. I'm growing a bigger dislike for it. And in the past, I was like, this is my normal. And she says, this does not have to be my normal. And it's weird. Something else that she mentioned on this has to do with her being in a way ambushed by producers about her sexuality and being asked and confronted to speak about her sexuality on camera and having to come out on the show, even though it wasn't something she would have done in her real life, because she didn't feel like she should have to come out. Because why does anyone have to come out where all our sexuality is our sexuality? Do heterosexuals of often say, I like boys or girls? You know, it's just not something that most people do. But she said that her coming out on television wasn't the plan. And she said she doesn't like the idea of having to come out as queer when straight people don't have to come out as straight. But sitting in the interview chair, a producer asked her a question that caught her off guard. We were interviewing, I think, about the divorce or about my sister Isabel moving to North Carolina. Then all of the sudden, the producer was like, hey, your mom mentioned that you're bi. Do you want to talk about that? And I was like, well, it's true. Can you imagine your mom disclosing your sexuality to a film producer and then your producer then using that later on to talk with you about your sexuality? That almost seems like a violation in a way. And I'm not a hater of Christine, but not everything about your kid should be public, right? And this is coming from a woman that I don't even show photos of my kid. And I don't talk about him because I don't want him to have a public life. And then their sexuality is just content for a show. She recalls stumbling through an explanation of what being bisexual means. One she now feels was so dumb in the scene she described being attracted to men, women, and other gender spectrums. The stilted description came from what she called being jumped by the producer, asking the question, here's my opinion. No one should be forced to talk about their private life and areas of their private life that they're not willing to say publicly if they don't want to. Gwendolyn wasn't hiding her sexuality, by the way. Okay, she had been talking about it on Twitter, and she had been posting about it on her Instagram. It wasn't something she was hiding, but it's very different to use social media to express yourself than it is to have to go on a nationally syndicated show with TLC on a network that's going to be watched by millions of people. And a lot of those people are people from a culture that won't accept you. And so this could open up a lot of discrimination towards you. And it's just being used as a way to get ratings. You know, Gwendolyn doesn't mention this, but she did say that when she did talk to her family about her sexuality, Robin got mad at her and told her she should have saved it for the cameras. So when your parents are looking at your big moments in life as an opportunity to make money, that's kind of a problem when it comes to payment. They brought up some of the big issues with TLC when it comes to child labor because of what happened with Kate Gosling in Pennsylvania and what Jill Duggar has written about in her book. And Gwendolyn echoed what they experienced and said, The network only paid the parents. I'm not sure if they did or didn't expect the parents to pay us kids, but we weren't paid. In the later years, she says her mom decided to pay her kids a certain amount per day or half day of camera time. She's not exactly sure how much she was paid. She adds, "It certainly hasn't been a fair share." And then a spokesperson for TLC said the network doesn't discuss specific talent agreements, but the compensation is handled in accordance with contractual commitments and applicable labor laws and regulations. How are the payments being handled under labor laws and regulations when the kids don't even have a contract themselves? You are avoiding a contract for that very specific reason, like they're using a loophole where they pay the parent and not the kid. They do that intentionally so that they don't have to get permits for work, permits for the kids. And because the states that they were living in didn't demand that the kids have contracts or have a trust fund set up for them, they seek to film children in states that have lax laws like that. So they reached out to Christine, and she said that the children were not paid for their filming at first, though the family did put money aside for their college and vehicle funds. We all know about the college and vehicle funds, and we all know that the kids were not driving new cars. They were driving cars that were maybe $2,000, $3,000, which for a lot of kids is a luxury, right? But they weren't driving new cars. And if they set aside money for the college, why did so many of the boys go through the military? Kody pushed the boys into the military because they paid for education. So Kody wasn't paying for Hunter College, who went to the Air Force Academy. He didn't pay for Garrison. He certainly didn't pay for Peyton. I have no idea if he paid for Gabriel and Gwendolyn at one point. I think said that her mom paid for her college, but I don't know that all of the parents, all of the kids' college was paid, and not all the kids went through or completed college. So for the kids that didn't complete college, where's their money? And paying for college isn't payment for work. It's not if a parent has the money to pay for a child to go to college. It's almost a responsibility for a lot of parents. That's how a lot of parents view it. But they're treating college like it's a gift. And because they're adults, parents don't have to pay, but it's often paid for by parents because the kids don't have the money to pay for it themselves. And in order to get their footing in the real world, having a college degree sets them up for success. And what I think is interesting is we don't know what Janelle's model is. I don't know if Janelle's paying anyone. We know that Gwendolyn said her mom did, but we don't know about anyone else. And if Kody wasn't paying them, I would bet you all the money in the world that he doesn't pay any of his kids with Robin. So if you want to know the truth about why these kids aren't on the show, it's because they have no privacy. Their parents use their stories for views. They're not paid for it, and they're exploited for drama and to make a show so the network can get ratings. And is that really the way you want to live your life, working for free? I'd say no, so keep that in mind as you continue watching this season. I'm proud of Glenda for speaking out. This is very timely and this is very direct, and it's a good way to remind people of the kind of scummy scumbag of Kody Brown. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed, and click the bell so you never miss a video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye, guys.